They say life doesn't give you closure. I say they're wrong. I remember the moment like a freeze frame. The overhead light flickered, half burnt out, casting a dull yellow over the hallway that had seen more of our life than any therapist ever would. She didn't even check if I was home. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she hoped I'd see. Either way, she kissed him. Her ex. Right there. In our damn entranceway. Her lips found as like it was some slow-motion romance flick. The kind of kiss that said, I've been waiting for this. Not a mistake. Not heat of the moment. No, this was premeditated. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a vase or punch a wall. I just stood there in the kitchen, hand frozen mid-reach toward the fridge, breath caught somewhere between a laugh and a choke. I felt the floor drop out beneath me, and all I could think was, we bought that rug together. She didn't see me at first. That's what stings the most. I wasn't even a factor in the moment. Just a ghost in the home I paid for. A background character in my own life. When they broke apart, she turned, and that smile, that smug, satisfied smile, collapsed the second her eyes locked with mine. I watched her face go from thrill to panic. Her lips parted, ready to explain, to spin something, anything. I didn't give her the chance. I walked to the coat rack, grabbed the duffel I always kept ready, old habit from college days, long before the mortgage and the his and hers towel sets. I packed in silence. Toothbrush. Socks. The watch my father left me. One photograph of my late dog. I left the wedding album. She started talking too fast, too loud. Her voice trailed after me as I passed the threshold. I remember thinking, even her apologies sound performative. I didn't slam the door. I just closed it with the kind of calm that's scarier than rage. And that was it. The end. No drawn-out drama. No, we need to talk. I disappeared. Changed my number. Left town. Erased myself from her narrative like I was never part of the story to begin with. 9 years. 9 years of rebuilding. I started over in a city where no one knew her name or mine. I climbed the corporate ladder, rung by bloodied rung. Now I run the office I used to fetch coffee in. Corner desk. Glass walls. People call me sir and ask before entering my space. And then one rainy Tuesday she walks in. Same eyes. Same perfume. Different desperation. Her heels click across the tile as she approaches reception. I'm behind the glass wall, watching it all like a spectator at my own vindication. She's holding a resume. I can tell the second she sees me, her breath catches, her voice dips, and she adjusts her posture like good posture can erase bad decisions. She leans in and says something to the receptionist. I can't hear it. Doesn't matter. The receptionist buzzes me. Sir? There's a miss. I see her. I step out. Walk slow. Measured. She looks at me like she's seen a ghost, or maybe a ghost that got promoted. Her lips part. Again. I beat her to it. Next. I don't say it with anger. I say it with finality. Like a verdict. Her mouth closes. No more words. She turns, slow and hollow, and walks back the way she came. And just like that, I got my closure. You'd think walking away from someone you once thought was your forever would come with regret. It didn't. What came was silence. Not peaceful at first, more like the kind of silence that fills a house after a fire. The walls still stood, but the echoes of everything burned whispered through the halls. I checked into a motel that night. One of those cheap roadside places that smelled like bleach and old smoke. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for an hour before I even took off my shoes. I wasn't tired. I was cleaning house, not the kind with a mop, but the kind where you torch your past to make room for something better. The next morning, I handed in my resignation letter. My boss, good guy, clueless, asked if everything was okay. I told him it was personal. He nodded like he understood, even though we both knew he didn't. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I left the city with a duffel bag and a battered Honda Civic that coughed more than it ran. My savings were modest, but I didn't care. I wasn't running from a woman, I was running toward peace. I ended up in a small coastal town 2 states over. Population, we mind our own business. The kind of place with diners instead of brunch spots, where your mechanic is also your fishing buddy, and where no one cares what college you went to. I found a small apartment above a bakery. The smell of bread at 5 a.m. was better than any alarm clock. I picked up work as a shipping assistant for a logistics company. Low pay, hard hours, but honest. I liked it. No politics. No pretense. Just hands-on grind. Every night, I'd come home sore but clear-headed. I cooked. I ran. I sat by the beach with a dog-eared notebook and a six-pack. The waves didn't judge. The wind didn't ask questions. For the first time in years, I wasn't living someone else's idea of a perfect life. Then came the promotion. Then another. By year 5, I was managing a small team. By year 7, I was regional director. And by year 9, I had my own office. Glass walls. Full staff. A nameplate on the desk that bore my name like a scar that healed cleaner than the cut ever was. You know what they don't tell you about starting over? That it makes you better. Sharper. It carves away the weak parts of you, the people-pleasing, the desperate hope for approval. What's left is lean, focused, and unshakable. I didn't date for years. People noticed. Some thought I was shy. Some thought I was broken. Let them wonder. I was rebuilding something deeper than a relationship. I was rebuilding me. Then one day, she walked in. I didn't recognize her right away. Not because she looked different, she didn't. Still wore that same perfume. Still had that confident sway in her hips. But time had added something to her face. Not wrinkles. Not wear. Just absence. Like something behind her eyes had dimmed. She had a portfolio in her hand and a hopeful smile on her face. A mask. A desperate little mask. I let her speak. I didn't cut her off. I just stood there. I wanted to see if she'd recognize me, not my face, but what I'd become. When her smile faltered and her eyes widened, I knew she did. She started to talk. Probably to say she didn't expect to see me. Probably to explain how much things had changed. Probably to toss out some version of it was complicated back then. But I wasn't interested in rewinding the film. I looked at her. No smile. No anger. Just 2 syllables. Next. It landed like a gavel. Like closure disguised as a punchline. She blinked. A little breath hitched. She turned without another word and walked out of my office. And just like that, the door closed behind her for the last time. 9 years ago, I left that entranceway a broken man. Today, I stood in a glass fortress of my own design, unshaken. Funny how life pays you back. Sometimes, it takes a while. But it always comes with interest. The door clicked shut behind her, soft, almost apologetic. Like even the hinges knew she'd overstayed her welcome. I stood there for a few seconds longer than I needed to, watching the empty hallway. It was the same hallway 100 other applicants had walked down, resumes in hand, hope in their eyes. None of them had history attached to their perfume. I turned and walked back to my desk. My assistant, Jules, peeked her head in a few minutes later. That woman, she seemed rattled. You want me to pull her resume? I waved it off. No need. She's not a fit. Jules raised an eyebrow. She was smart. Knew how to ask a question without asking. But I wasn't in the mood for backstory. She's part of my past, I said simply. And I don't rehire what I already fired from my life. That was the end of it for Jules. But not for me. Because the moment she walked out, something cracked open. Not regret. No, I'd buried that with the wedding ring she never noticed I left on the nightstand. What cracked open was something colder. Something cleaner. I remembered how she used to stand in the doorframe, years ago, wearing my shirt, coffee in hand, acting like she was the reason the sun came up. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the woman. The partner. The forever. Turns out, she was just the lesson. I hadn't spoken her name out loud in nearly a decade. People asked if I was married. I'd just say, not anymore, and let them fill in the blanks. Most assumed she left me. Some assumed she died. The truth? I made her disappear. Quietly. Completely. Not out of hate. Out of necessity. Because a man who stays in a burning house doesn't earn your sympathy, he earns your pity. And I've had enough of that for a lifetime. That night, I went home to a place I chose, not one built for compromise. Sleek, modern, nothing soft or sentimental. No wedding photos, no dried flowers in a vase. Just space that belonged to me. I poured a drink, rye, neat, and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like a million little eyes pretending to be stars. Her face wouldn't leave me, though. Not the face from today. The one from then. That smirk she gave me the day I confronted her, if you could even call it that. The confrontation lasted all of 3 sentences. You kissed him. It was a mistake. No. Marrying me was the mistake. Kissing him was just the result. She cried. I didn't. She reached for me. I stepped back. She begged. I packed. She wanted a fight. I gave her absence. And in doing so, I gave myself a second life. I sat down at my desk that night and opened a file labeled simply, Closure. Inside were a few old emails, a scanned wedding photo, and one particularly painful letter she wrote me the month after I left. Never mailed it. I found it in a shared folder she forgot to scrub clean. I keep waiting for you to come back. To yell. To fight. To scream that I ruined everything. But your silence is worse. It's like I don't exist anymore. And maybe I deserve that. But I wish you'd give me one last word, just so I knew you still saw me. I read it once, then deleted it. That was her final word. Next, in the morning, I'd go back to work. I'd run meetings, approve budgets, fire someone for underperformance, and hire someone else who deserved a shot. But for now, I sat in my chair, staring into the night, a glass in hand. I'd won. Not because I'd climbed some ladder or had a title under my name. No, because she walked into my world needing something, and I walked away needing nothing at all. You don't forget your first real heartbreak. Not because it was special, but because of how deeply it humiliated you. Like getting slapped in front of a crowd while you were still holding flowers. Before she became the woman in my office, desperate for a job and trying to hide the years, I knew her as the woman who made oatmeal cookies on Sunday afternoons and sang along to indie playlists while folding laundry in her socks. She used to leave little notes in my jacket pockets. I found one once before a major pitch. You've already won. Just let them catch up. God, I was stupid for thinking that kind of love couldn't rot. Back then, I had this fantasy, most men do, that if you gave everything, if you worked hard, stayed loyal, showed up every day with love and effort and patience, that the woman you chose would stay chosen. Turns out, love isn't a reward system. It's a gamble. And I went all in on someone who was bluffing the whole time. I remember the first sign. We just hit our 2-year anniversary. I came home early with dinner and flowers, nothing extravagant, just something real. She wasn't there. No note. No text. She came back hours later, half drunk and giggling over something her ex had texted. Claimed she ran into him at a bar by accident. Said they caught up. Her smile was too easy. Her story too polished. I asked her, "Are we okay?" And she laughed. Said, "Of course we are." Why? Why? Like I was the problem for noticing the ice forming beneath the surface. The week after that, she changed her phone password. The week after that, she started saying she needed space. The week after that, I came home and found his cologne on her scarf. I didn't confront her that night. I just sat across from her at dinner, eating in silence, while she scrolled through Instagram like our life wasn't crumbling. I watched her chew like nothing was wrong. That's when it hit me. Betrayal doesn't always show up in fireworks. Sometimes it arrives wearing your favorite hoodie, eating your leftovers, humming to your playlist, acting like home while leaving the doors wide open to strangers. After that, I stopped trying. I started saving. In the months that followed, I made quiet moves. Moved my paycheck to a private account. Hired a quiet lawyer, divorced twice, discreet, ruthless. Made a copy of her messages. I didn't read them. Didn't need to. Just wanted receipts. Then, the night she kissed him in our entranceway, that was mercy. That was her handing me the final key. So I turned it, opened the door to my own freedom, and left without a sound. Years passed. Promotions. New cities. Hard days. Better ones. People asked me if I'd ever date again. Eventually, I'd say. But deep down I knew I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for peace. And love, when it goes wrong, robs a man of that faster than anything else. Now here I was, full circle. The same woman who once broke me with a kiss was standing across from me asking for a job. She didn't know that I'd already read her resume the night before. Saw the gaps in employment. The canned references. The desperation between the lines. She didn't know I'd made a note to myself the second I saw her name. Do not hire. She walked in with that old smile. That manipulative, disarming smile. The same one she used the first time she lied about him. She probably thought I'd at least hear her out. But I didn't need to. Because some debts don't get paid with apologies. They get paid with consequences. When I said, next, I didn't just mean the next applicant. I meant the next chapter. And she? She was stuck in the old one. The morning after she walked out of my office, head low, eyes hollow, I expected to feel something. Victory. Closure. Triumph. Instead, I felt exactly what I had the moment I walked away from her 9 years ago. Nothing. And that was the real win. You can't fake indifference. Not like you can fake tears, or remorse, or it didn't mean anything. Indifference is earned. It's built layer by layer, through every sleepless night and every day you forced yourself forward without looking back. I didn't wonder where she went after that. But fate? Fate doesn't like clean exits. That afternoon, I got a call from HR. Jules transferred it straight to me without asking. There's a woman at the front desk again. Same one from yesterday, the voice said. She's asking to speak with you. She said it's personal. Personal. There it was. I leaned back in my chair, took a breath, then answered the only way that made sense. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. Indefinitely. The line went quiet for a beat. Got it. That night, I passed by the building lobby on my way out and caught a glimpse of her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was just sitting there, staring at the wall like she couldn't believe the show was over and no one had handed her an encore. And I realized something. She didn't come back because she missed me. She didn't come back because she regretted what she did. She came back because she needed. And I was no longer willing to be needed. Funny how life flips the script. Once upon a time, she had me wrapped around her finger, hook, line, soul. Now, she was just another applicant with a thin resume and no leverage. The difference? I'd grown. She hadn't. You see, when a man rebuilds himself from the ashes of betrayal, he learns to stop looking for smoke signals from the past. He stops checking old photos, revisiting old messages, or wondering what if. He starts building walls, not to keep people out, but to make sure only the right ones find their way in. And the locks? They're not on the doors. They're on the heart. The next day, Jules brought in a manila envelope. No return address. No postage. Just my name written on the front. Front desk said a woman dropped it off this morning, she said. Brow furrowed. I took it. Didn't open it right away. Didn't need to. It was her. Curiosity finally got the better of me later that night. I opened it with the indifference of a man reading someone else's story. Inside, a typed letter, a printed photograph, and a worn-out paper crane. The letter was full of the usual: regret, memories, a vague apology that never once said, "I'm sorry I hurt you. Only I wish things had turned out different." The photograph? Us, on our wedding day. Smiling like idiots. God, I looked young. She looked convincing. And the crane? I knew that one. She used to fold them when she was anxious. Left them around the apartment like breadcrumbs of her guilt. This one was stained near the fold. I wondered if it was wine or tears. Didn't matter. I lit the letter with a match, watched it burn in the sink, tossed the photo in after it. And the crane? I held on to that one. Not out of sentiment. Out of strategy. It was a reminder that someone who can fold paper with such delicate precision can still rip a man in half without raising her voice. It wasn't just her. It never is. You think betrayal starts with the act, the kiss, the lie, the bed that smells like someone else. But no. It starts earlier. Quieter. It starts when your friends stop looking you in the eye because they know something you don't. It starts when the people closest to you, people you would have bled for, choose comfort over truth. Because when she kissed him in our entranceway, I wasn't the only one watching. Her friend Rachel? The maid of honor, who always had something snide to say about me in a joking tone? She knew. Guaranteed. Probably helped her pick out the dress she wore when she met up with him the second time. Her cousin Marco, who used to pull me aside and say, "You're good for her, man." Yeah? Didn't stop him from covering for her when she needed a last-minute alibi one Saturday night. They all knew. They just didn't tell me. Because people don't protect you. They protect comfort. They protect their own peace. And telling the truth? That risks conflict. I realized that fast. And when I walked out of that house, I didn't just leave a woman behind. I left everyone behind. It was about 3 months after I started my new life when I got the first, "Hey, man, you okay?" text from an old friend. Too late. You don't check on a man after the fire. You bring the water while the flames are still licking his nameplate off the mailbox. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry. Because I'd started to understand something deeper. Silence is a weapon. Stillness is power. Distance? That's how you stay clean. I learned how to move like smoke, quiet, invisible, and impossible to hold. Fast forward to now, post-dash, next, post-envelope, post-everything, and I'm standing in front of the mirror in a suit that cost more than our entire honeymoon. Funny, I used to feel uncomfortable in expensive things. Like I hadn't earned the right. Now, I wear it like armor. There's a benefit dinner tonight, part of my job, part of the public image that comes with leadership. I used to dread these events. Not anymore. Because now, I walk into rooms not needing approval. I am the approval. And guess who's catering? Yup. Her. I spotted her from across the room, trying too hard to look busy, refilling empty glasses that were already full, adjusting napkins that were perfectly aligned, avoiding eye contact like a criminal at a cops convention. I didn't approach. Didn't need to. Because moments like this? They aren't for confrontation. They're for observation. I watched as she hovered near the dessert table, pretending not to notice me. And then, just like clockwork, One of the newer board members walked up to her. Tall, polished, married. He smiled that smile. The one I recognized. The same one her ex gave her the night she betrayed me in our doorway. She smiled back. Same pattern. Different setting. People don't change. They adapt. They evolve their tactics. But if you know what to look for, you'll see the repeat loop spinning right behind their eyes. And in that moment, I wasn't angry. I wasn't jealous. I was done. By the time the night ended, she still hadn't looked in my direction. Not once. Because deep down, she knew. Not just that I was the man she wronged, but that I had become the one man she couldn't reach anymore. Not through charm. Not through guilt. Not through nostalgia. I was untouchable. And she was just another face in the crowd, smiling, laughing, performing, while quietly unraveling beneath the mask. The next morning, Jules dropped a report on my desk, quarterly performance numbers, nothing out of the ordinary. But tucked between the sheets was a small note in her handwriting. That caterer from last night? She left her resume again, slipped it under the door. I thought you should know. I stared at the note for a full minute, slipped it under the door. What kind of person comes back through the side entrance of a life they detonated? She wasn't chasing a job. She was chasing redemption. But she was chasing it through the wrong door. I didn't mention it to Jules. Didn't ask her to toss it. Didn't need to. I got up, walked the envelope to the shredder, and fed it through without opening it. The machine word. Cold, mechanical, efficient. It felt appropriate. I don't remember when exactly I stopped thinking about her daily. Maybe year 3. Maybe year 5. But by year 9, she was a ghost, a name I didn't even whisper anymore. So it was strange that I started seeing her everywhere again. Not in person. In echoes. A woman passed me on the sidewalk humming a song she used to play while cleaning on Sundays. I saw a scarf like hers in a storefront window. Even the damn bakery on 9th Street had started carrying those lemon scones she used to buy in bulk when she was stressed. That's the cruel trick of memory. Just when you've made peace with forgetting, life decides to jog your memory with a sledgehammer. I spent that evening doing something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the old fireproof safe from my closet. The one that held the last remaining artifacts from that life. Inside, our marriage certificate, now yellowing at the edges. One of her handwritten birthday cards, all swirls and cutesy doodles. And a flash drive labeled insurance. That flash drive held every digital footprint of her affair. Screenshots, messages, photos, audio, dates, locations. Even her excuse-laden diary entries that she thought I didn't know about. I never looked at it after the day I left. I didn't need the pain then. But now? I opened the files. Not for closure. For documentation. There's a moment when a man goes from hurt to strategic. That's when he becomes dangerous, not in a violent, vengeful way, but in the way chess players become dangerous when they sacrifice their queen early. You think the game's over. But it's only just begun. And now? Now I held every thread of her betrayal in my hand. Not to use. Just to remind myself. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't blind. I was right. You know what stung the most? It wasn't the sexts. It wasn't the hotel reservations under fake names. It wasn't even the call log where she phoned him the night of our anniversary while I was upstairs planning a weekend getaway. It was a text she sent her best friend. I'm not in love with him anymore, but I like how he still tries. That was the blade. Because trying? Trying was all I did. I didn't buy her with gifts. I bought groceries when she forgot. I fixed the cabinet hinge that always came loose. I picked up her prescriptions. I drove her dad to the airport when his arthritis flared up. I let her think she was the center of gravity while I was spinning the whole damn solar system behind the scenes. And I was a joke. A running joke. In her private comedy of errors. But that ends now. Because she left a paper trail. And now I'm the one holding the match. Not to burn her down. The thing about people like her? They think time rewrites the story. They believe enough years, enough miles, and enough new faces will blur the edges of what they did. That you'll forget. Forgive, even. That memory is like a Polaroid left out in the sun, fading until there's nothing left but a white square and a vague feeling you used to care. But I don't fade. I file. And I remember everything. 2 days after shredding her envelope, I got a call from a familiar number. Blocked, but familiar. Some numbers you memorized not because you want to, but because they branded you. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Voice quiet, rehearsed. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I've made mistakes. Big ones. And I was hoping, maybe, we could talk. Not about the job. Just talk. I played it twice. Not because I was debating calling back. Because I needed to hear that voice again, stripped of its usual arrogance, trembling under the weight of reality. It didn't move me. It confirmed me. A week passed. Then came the letter. Not another resume. No. A letter, handwritten. Cream paper. Neat cursive. She still had nice handwriting. I'll give her that. I'm not asking for anything. I swear. But I've been trying to get back on my feet and everything's harder than I thought. I burned bridges. I see that now. I'm tired. And I needed to reach out. To someone who once knew me before I lost myself. That someone was you. She went on about how life didn't turn out the way she planned. That she thought marrying her rebound, yeah, she married him, would somehow wipe the slate clean. It didn't. He left her 3 years later. No kids. No house. Just debt and resentment. She moved around. Waitressed. Managed a boutique. Got laid off. Took up catering. Switched cities. Lost herself in reinvention after reinvention, but the one constant was her ability to circle back to men who hadn't figured her out yet. Only now? She couldn't find any more men who hadn't. She called them lessons. I call them victims. She ended the letter with this. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. Just your humanity. Humanity. That's rich. Where was hers when I came home to find her phone full of pictures that weren't mine? Where was hers when she said she loved me while texting him under the table? Where was hers when I kissed her forehead goodnight and she waited for me to snore before slipping out the door? I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. Not the trash, not the shredder. A drawer. Not because I'm holding on. Because reminders are necessary. Even the strongest man can get soft if he forgets why the walls went up in the first place. Later that week, I heard from someone I hadn't thought about in years, her mother. She emailed my company, believe it or not, through the general inquiries line. Said she understood there may have been some friction in the past, but her daughter was going through a very hard time. She asked if I could find it in my heart to help her. She even offered to make it worth my while, as if bribing me to forget betrayal was just business. I didn't respond, but I saved the email. You see, I wasn't angry anymore. I was taking inventory of just how far some people will fall when their masks slip off, and no one's left to clap for the performance. It was a Friday. Quiet. Overcast. One of those days where the city feels like it's holding its breath. I had just wrapped a quarterly meeting with my department heads, standard stuff, nothing remarkable, when Jules buzzed in over the intercom. Sir, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. I already knew who it was before Jules added, says her name is Eliza. She used her full name, not the pet names. Not Lisa or Elle or Honey, it's me. She came with formality, with intent. And this time, I said, send her in. Because something in me, call it curiosity, call it cruelty, wanted to see what she looked like standing in front of a man she no longer had power over. She walked in slower than I remembered. Not limping, just tentative. Like someone visiting the house they used to own. Her clothes were modest. Clean. Nothing flashy. But I could tell she'd taken time. Done her makeup carefully. Chosen earrings that matched the version of herself she thought might still impress me. She didn't sit until I gestured. And when she did, she didn't speak. Neither did I. We just stared. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. Finally, she exhaled. Thank you for seeing me. I said nothing. She fidgeted with a ring on her right hand, not a wedding band. Just something to keep her fingers from shaking. I know I don't deserve to be here. I don't know where else to go. Still silent. Because silence is what you give people who used to manipulate you with words. She told me everything. Not because I asked. Because silence invites confession. He, her ex, left her after she caught him cheating. The irony of that didn't seem to register. Or maybe it did, and she just didn't have the strength to pretend it was different anymore. Her job prospects had dried up. Her references weren't reliable. Word got around. She'd moved twice in the last year. Lived with friends. Slept on couches. The catering gig she picked up last minute was supposed to be steady, but the company folded. Now she was drifting. Then she looked up at me. And here's where she made her mistake. She said, I didn't come here to beg, but I thought maybe you could point me in a direction. Help me start over. Not ask. Not apologize. Just assume. She still thought I was that man. The one who forgave. The one who tried. The one who made her breakfast the morning after she lied to my face, then kissed her like I didn't already know she was wearing someone else's cologne. She still thought there was a piece of me, some fragment, who'd hear her story and toss her a rope. But here's the thing. That man died the moment I heard her moan another man's name in a voicemail she forgot to delete. I leaned forward. I'm not going to help you. Her breath caught. I'm not going to recommend you. I'm not going to call anyone for you. I'm not going to hand you some poetic new beginning wrapped in grace and closure. That's not how this works. She blinked fast. I didn't stop. Because when you buried me 9 years ago, you didn't leave flowers. You left me in a ditch and drove off. And now you're back, hoping I'd build a ladder for you out of forgiveness. I stood up, walked to the door, opened it. She didn't move. I didn't ask again. Eventually, she stood. Her eyes were glossy but dry, too proud to cry in front of me. Good. Let her keep one last thing. At the threshold, she turned back. Softly, you've changed. I smiled. Exactly. When the door clicked behind her, I didn't feel triumph. I felt precision, like a surgeon closing the final stitch. Because this wasn't revenge. It was completion. The story that began with a kiss in my doorway ended with me holding the door. And her? She walked through it, empty-handed, just like she left me. After she left my office, for good this time, Jules came in with a puzzled look. You good, boss? I nodded once. Better than ever. She gave me a long look, like she wanted to ask but knew better. Smart woman. Loyal, too. The kind you promote not just because she's sharp, but because she knows when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. I poured myself a cup of stale coffee, leaned against the windowsill, and looked out at the city. For years, I thought healing meant closure. Now I know healing isn't soft. It isn't peaceful. Healing is bloody. It's brutal. It's getting up every day and choosing not to call, not to go back, not to explain yourself to people who never deserve the truth. I didn't date much in the years after I left her. Not because I was bitter, because I was rebuilding. See, people think the opposite of heartbreak is love, but they're wrong. The opposite of heartbreak is freedom. And once you get a taste of it, you stop rushing to give it away again. It was year 4 when I finally let someone in again. Not all the way, but enough to sit across from her at dinner and not compare the way she held her wine glass to someone who used to lie through hers. Her name was Caroline. Not flashy, not loud, no games. She ordered bourbon straight and didn't flinch at silence. We talked about music, about the ugliness of family, about how some people never leave high school emotionally, even if they age out physically. She didn't ask me about her. Not once. But she knew. She knew I'd been broken in a way that didn't show up on X-rays, and she never tried to fix it. That was what made her different. We didn't fall in love quickly. We built something slowly. That's the difference between a fire and a foundation. A fire makes you feel alive for a moment. A foundation keeps you standing for a lifetime. By year 6, Caroline had moved in. We didn't need some Instagram announcement. We didn't hold hands for show. She brought 2 boxes, a coffee grinder, and a sense of peace I didn't know could exist between 2 people who both came from cracked glass homes. She knew about my past. Eventually, I didn't lay it all out at once. Just a few pieces, over time. The betrayal, the exit, the office moment, the next. When I told her, she didn't gasp or pity me. She just said, "And you still have room for someone?" That's rare. And I said, I didn't have room. I made it. Here's the thing no one tells you. Moving on isn't about finding someone better. It's about becoming someone better, so you never let someone like that near you again. It's about sharpening your instincts without hardening your heart. It's about knowing what red flags look like and not painting them white out of loneliness. About a month ago, I got an email from a mutual acquaintance. One of those, hey, thought you should know types. Apparently, she, Eliza, left town. Again, no forwarding address. Rumor has it she burned her last bridge. Showed up to an old friend's wedding drunk. Started a scene. Someone filmed it. It made the rounds. And now, she's vanished. A ghost of a ghost. Caroline and I sat on the couch that night, fire crackling low, watching some quiet foreign film with too much dialogue and not enough action. She was half asleep, head on my shoulder, fingers looped lazily through mine. I didn't mention the email. I didn't even open it. Because I don't let ghosts live rent-free in my new house. Especially ones that kissed me goodbye through someone else's mouth. There's something sacred about a man's home when he builds it himself. Not with his hands, necessarily, but with his choices. I chose this one. Modern, but not cold. Big windows. Exposed brick. No ghosts in the walls. No perfume haunting the sheets. Just space. Real space. that didn't echo with someone else's broken promises. And it had a garden. Funny, right? The same guy who once lived out of a duffel bag and could pack up his entire life in 6 minutes now spends Saturdays pruning rosemary and telling squirrels to keep off the tomatoes. Healing does that to you. You stop chasing fireworks. You start planting roots. Caroline made the house feel alive. Not by decorating it in cliché Pinterest flair or filling every room with fake plants and empty platitudes, but by showing up. She didn't try to erase my past. She just didn't let it own the space. One evening, we were painting the guest room. She picked a soft gray. Neutral, she said, but not boring. I joked that it looked like the kind of color people pick right before they put the place on the market. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me and said, "I'm not going anywhere." And she hasn't. You know you've grown when you stop looking for signs she'll leave and start noticing all the little ways she stays. I used to think love was loud, that it was grand gestures and breathless speeches and chasing someone down in the rain like a movie extra with too much hope. Now I know better. Love is the coffee pot set to brew 10 minutes before your alarm. It's finding your favorite hoodie folded when you didn't even realize you left it on the floor. It's not checking her phone, not because you trust her blindly, but because you trust yourself not to tolerate being lied to again. That's the difference. I'm not naive anymore, but I'm not bitter either. I'm just ready. One night, Caroline asked, "Do you think you could have forgiven her?" I knew who she meant. It was late. We were on the back porch. The garden lights were still on, casting long shadows across the lawn. I took a sip of whiskey before answering. No, not because I didn't believe in forgiveness, but because some betrayals aren't debts you forgive. They're taxes you pay for trusting the wrong person. And once the payment clears, you move on. Clean. Empty-handed, sure, but finally free. I thought about Eliza sometimes, not with longing, not even with anger, just with a clinical curiosity, like someone remembering a car crash they walked away from. You don't miss the wreck. You just marvel at how far you've come from it. And you keep driving. A few weeks back, Caroline and I hosted a small dinner. Friends. Music. Wine. No forced toasts. No drama. At one point, someone asked me how I met Caroline. Before I could answer, she smiled and said, "He met me when he stopped looking for people to save and finally started saving himself." Everyone laughed. But me? I just looked at her. Because she was right. And it hit me. That entranceway she kissed him in 9 years ago, it wasn't where the story ended. It was where mine began. There's a difference between peace and quiet. Quiet is the absence of noise. Peace is the absence of need. I didn't understand that in the early years. After she kissed him, after I vanished, after I rebuilt myself brick by brick, I thought peace meant silence. No calls, no emails, no messy emotions. But real peace? It's not about what's missing. It's about what you don't miss anymore. Caroline and I had started looking at properties outside the city, somewhere with more space, fewer horns, less pretense. Not because we were escaping anything, because we could. We'd earned it. One place caught our eye, a farmhouse an hour out. Rustic on the outside. Reinforced steel beams on the inside. Kind of like me. It had a wraparound porch and an ancient oak tree in the front yard. The realtor mentioned it had weathered 3 storms without so much as a cracked shutter. I looked at Caroline and said, "Sounds like us." She smiled. That night, we made an offer. Funny how life works. Years ago, I stood in the same spot of my former house, our marital home, and watched her kiss another man. Now, I stood in this one, watching a woman I trusted walk barefoot through an empty living room, talking about where to hang pictures. You don't forget the pain. But eventually, you stop needing it. You stop referencing it like a badge. You stop using it as proof that you survived. Because survival isn't enough anymore. Peace is the new currency, and it spends better than revenge ever did. About a week after we closed on the house, I got a message. Not from her. From him. The one she kissed. The one I never even named out loud for almost a decade. He tracked me down through LinkedIn, of all places. His message was short. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I've carried that night with me. She told me you knew. I just wanted to say, I was a coward. I never should have let it happen." I stared at it. No rage. Just mild curiosity. He sounded tired. Like someone who had been playing offense for years, but suddenly realized he never even knew what game he was in. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because if you're waiting 9 years to apologize, you're not sorry. You're cornered. And I'm not in the business of freeing people from corners they built for themselves. Let him sit there. Let him rot with the memory. Because I've long since moved into a different room. One with hardwood floors, open windows, and a woman who knows what it means to build, not borrow. A few nights ago, I stood under that old oak tree, whiskey in hand, Caroline inside, humming something soft from the kitchen, and I thought about how far I'd come. From a shattered man in a doorway, to a silent man at a desk, to this, not healed, forged, because healing implies a return to what you were. Forging means you become something stronger than what broke you. I went back inside, locked the door behind me. The past doesn't belong here. Only what I choose to carry does. And I've got two strong hands, a solid foundation, and not 1 ounce of her memory weighing me down. It happened on a Sunday morning. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a phone call with a name I hadn't heard in years. Her name, spoken by a stranger who had no idea what it meant to me. I was out back sanding the porch railing. Caroline was inside making coffee. The sun hadn't even burned the dew off the grass yet. Peaceful. Still. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up, figuring it was a vendor or maybe a delayed contractor. "Hi, is this Mr. Hensley?" The voice asked, flat, businesslike. "Yes," I said slowly, wiping sawdust off my forearm. "This is regarding Eliza Dunn. You're listed as an emergency contact." I froze. It took a full 5 seconds to respond. "Excuse me." The woman on the line sighed softly, as if she'd had this conversation too many times with too many people who didn't want to hear what came next. She was admitted to St. Corwin's Medical Center 2 nights ago. No ID. Only a slip of paper in her wallet with your name and number. She wrote my name. After everything. After all the doors, all the silence, all the ash, she still carried my name. Not her rebound husband. Not a friend. Not even a family member. Me. The man she kissed goodbye without even looking back. I didn't tell Caroline. Not right away. Not because I was hiding it. Because I was processing it. There's a weight to hearing that the person who broke you now wants you to be the one to hold their hand. It's like the wreckage calling back the architect and saying, "Hey, can you fix what you didn't cause?" I drove out there. Not for her. For me. To look this story in the eye and finally close the book, not just shut it. The hospital was quiet. Too quiet. I asked the nurse at the station. She pointed me to room 214. There she was. Eliza. Thinner. Paler. Worn out in a way that no spa weekend or haircut could fix. Her eyes were closed. For in her arm. Machines beeping steady. I stepped into the room and stood at the edge of the bed. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel rage. I felt confirmation. Like watching the end of a play where the villain finally collapses. Not in a blaze of glory, but in silence, unnoticed by the crowd that once adored them. She opened her eyes. Saw me. And didn't flinch. "Hey," she rasped. I said nothing. She smiled. Tired, cracked. "You came." I nodded once. She looked away, then back. Didn't know who else to put. Everyone else is gone. No surprise. That's what happens when you burn bridges and expect the ashes to float you home. She motioned weakly toward the chair. I sat slowly. She took a breath. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "Good. Because I didn't." She added. "I just didn't want to go without saying I'm sorry." I waited. Let her sit with the weight of that. Then I stood up, leaned down, and said, calmly, "You don't get to choose the last page." She blinked. I continued. "You wrote your ending when you kissed him in my doorway. Everything after that. Just epilogue." I turned to leave. She whispered, "Do you hate me?" I paused at the door. And I meant this when I said it. "No. I just don't care anymore." I walked out of that hospital freer than I've ever been. Not because she said sorry, but because I finally understood. Closure isn't hearing the apology. It's realizing you never needed it. After I left the hospital, I didn't look back. No second glance. No lingering thoughts. No cinematic pause in the parking lot. Just keys, ignition, drive. A clean exit. Because that was the last loose thread. The final scene. The ghost that had spent 9 years haunting the doorway of my life had finally faded, not because she vanished, but because she became irrelevant. You want to know when you're truly free? It's not when you walk away. It's when you realize they can't follow you anymore, even if they try. When I got home, Caroline was on the porch, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of coffee and wearing the sweatshirt she always stole from my side of the closet. She looked at me and knew. Not because I said anything. Because when you build something honest, something earned, The truth doesn't hide. It just waits quietly to be acknowledged. I walked up the steps and took the mug she held out. We sat, sipped. Silence between us, but the right kind. The kind you build trust in. Eventually, I said, she's still breathing. For now. Caroline nodded. You good? I looked out over the land. The trees swaying slightly. No traffic. No noise. Yeah, I'm done. It's strange how easy it is to become someone else. All it takes is intention. Not anger. Not revenge. Direction. After Eliza, I could have turned cynical. Started hunting for flaws in every woman I met. Built walls so high no one could scale them. But I didn't. Because I decided something the day I walked out that door. I would not let the worst thing that happened to me become the most important. I kept that promise. And it paid off. In ways I never saw coming. Caroline and I started talking about family. Not because of pressure. Not because we were supposed to. Because for the first time in my life, the idea didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a legacy. We weren't trying to fix anything. We weren't building on ruins. We were building fresh on soil that had never tasted betrayal. That's the difference between rebuilding and restarting. Rebuilding means you're still working with broken parts. Restarting means you've designed a new machine. I still get emails now and then from people from the past. Former coworkers. Her relatives. Even the occasional, just checking in message from someone who was their back when it all fell apart. They always ask the same thing. How did you come back from that? I tell them the truth. I didn't. The man who stood in that entranceway and watched his wife kiss another man? He didn't survive. He died. And someone better was born in his place. Some people think revenge is about making others suffer. No. Revenge is becoming someone they can never reach again. It's smiling when they expect you to scream. It's thriving when they bet on your ruin. It's being so far above their gravity that even if they scream your name from the bottom of the pit they dug, you don't even hear it. Because you're too busy living. You don't realize how much life you've got left until you stop living in reaction to the past. That's what the old version of me never understood. He was always scanning the horizon for the next red flag, the next betrayal, the next lie wrapped in lipstick. But when you're always on defense, you never build. You just patch holes. And I was done patching. The farmhouse became more than a home. It became a symbol. Of survival? No. Of sovereignty. We renovated it slow. Deliberate. No rush decisions. Every nail, every tile, every beam was discussed, chosen, aligned. And maybe that's why it felt different. There were no cracks left over from people we used to be. Just solid lines drawn by two people who had already been burned and decided not to bring the ashes with them. The kitchen? Hers. The study? Mine. The rest? Ours. No blurred lines. No hidden secrets. No emotional booby traps buried under smiles. Just space we respected and shared. One afternoon, I got a package in the mail. No sender. Inside, a small black box. No note. Inside that, a chain. Gold. Simple. And hanging from it? A paper crane. She kept it. The one I tossed in that drawer after her letter. Somehow, it found its way back to me. Maybe she came to the house. Maybe she paid someone to leave it. Doesn't matter. I didn't hang it up. Didn't throw it out either. I buried it. Right under the oak tree out back. Dug a small hole, dropped it in, covered it with earth. I told Caroline I was planting herbs. She didn't ask. She trusted me. And that's the difference between then and now. Before, I had to explain everything. Justify. Apologize for noticing the lies. Now, I'm trusted even in my silence. There's a freedom in that. A kind of quiet power that doesn't need to shout. Some nights I still sit on the porch with a drink in hand, and I think about him, the guy I used to be. The one who stood paralyzed in a doorway while his life fractured in front of him. I don't hate him. He got me here. But I don't miss him either. Caroline came out one evening holding her phone. Your company just hit 1 million units this quarter. I nodded. Not surprised. I didn't start the business to chase numbers. I started it because I knew no one would build the future I needed for me. So I did it myself. That's the lesson no one teaches you when you've been betrayed. You become dangerous not when you fight back, but when you build forward. We talked that night about names. Legacy. She said something that stuck with me. If it's a girl, I want her to grow up never seeing a man raise his voice to prove a point. I want her to know calm isn't weakness. I looked at her and said, if it's a boy, I want him to know strength isn't volume. It's restraint. We toasted to that. Two people who used to bleed. Now writing the blueprint for a generation that wouldn't.